Hey team, thank you so much for coming back. Last time we talked about how civilization began, how the modern world got its start. Go ahead and click this card here to catch that video and get all caught up. For the rest of us, let's dive in and talk about where civilization got its start. I'm of course talking about Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers, Mesopotamia. For now, we're going to take a look at one area in Mesopotamia, in two periods. We are interested right now in Sumer, and the Ubaid and Uruk expansions. First, let's dive into ancient Sumer. Sumer is special because it was the first place humans came together and urbanized. You know, all that stuff I talked about in the beginning. Super important stuff. Sumer was a region in what is now southern Iraq. Fun fact, the Persian Gulf is not where it was in antiquity. The water line has receded. Back in the day, the cities of Ur and Lagash were actually seaside cities. Ur, of course, being the city where Abraham came from, but not till around 2000 BC. Sumer was founded in the 4th century BC by people known as the ubaid. Remember that name because it is important. The ubaids. Ubaid. Ooh, it sounds cool. Ubaid. They replaced a people called the Halaf, a farming culture that set up the foundations for the ubaid, people who occupied southern Mesopotamia around 5500, 4000 BC. Long time ago. Hunter-gatherers had taken advantage of southern Mesopotamia for game and fishing. The fertile soil in the valley flooded, just like the Nile, and a predictable timeline that the locals used for farming and agriculture. As mentioned earlier, to keep what they had sown and reaped and to protect their herds and resources and to trade with the other people groups to the north, the people got together and founded the first cities, each with a local deity they prayed to. Enter Uruk, the world's first and largest city-state. The mighty King Gilgamesh is from this city. But that isn't the city that became the religious center for Sumer. No, that honor went to Eridu, not to be confused with Nippur, who became a very powerful and religious city indeed, mostly because of the city's chief deity, Enlil. But for now, it is Eridu, and that is largely due to its chief deity, Enki. Nippur will get its day after the Uruk expansion. Don't you worry about that. To understand the Sumerians, we must understand their gods. In particular, and especially for our purposes today, is Enlil and Enki, hence me bringing them up earlier. They have many stories about them, and that will be for another show. Just know for now that Enlil is the storm god. His city is Nippur, and it's in middle Mesopotamia, just on the outskirts of Sumer. Enki was the god of Eridu, which many people believed might have been the first city ever, not Uruk. But hey, dealer's choice. My researcher says Uruk, but eh. Oh, and just for giggles, the chief deity of Uruk is Anu, the great and powerful god of the sky. What is important here is that Enki is the god of underwater springs, and a lot of times that is how you see him, with fish and watery springs coming in and out of them. Yep, them crazy cats in Eridu loved them some Enki. And Enki was their friend. All of man's friends, really. Case in point, when Enlil got mad and tried to flood us all out, Enki told the dude, who made a circular ark with a bunch of animals on it, thus saving mankind from the floods. Enlil was so mad. Boy, howdy. He came storming in asking why the living being had survived. Enki was fingered immediately, but he deflected because the other gods had assembled. You see, the Sumerian Noah, a cat named Atrahasis, an Akkadian, although some records and sagas have him as Utnapishtim, like the Epic of Gilgamesh, while still other Mesopotamian texts have the name as Ziusudra. Same general dude, same general story with striking similarities to the biblical flood. All of them fake Noahs. Anyway, in the Epic of Gilgamesh on Tablet 11, fake Noah had offered sacrifices and aromatic incenses to the god, and they likey. So they came down, the text actually says they swarmed down like flies. Enlil was mad at Enki, who then flipped the script saying Enlil had slain the guiltless along with the guilty. He shamed Enlil, and then the other gods all put up measures to ensure the population of Earth doesn't get too big. A lot of interesting and fascinating stories about those two crazy kids, but I mention it now because off we go to the ubaid expansion. This is when the ubaid people, so named because of the excavation site where they found evidence of their existence.
They did not call themselves that. We don't know what they called themselves. We do know, however, that they pushed their culture out from Eridu and Uruk and all of Sumer into different parts of Mesopotamia and the Arabian Peninsula, into the Iranian flats.
This phase in culture is curious because the former expansion shows movement from the north down into the area of Sumer, the north of Sumer being northern Iraq and Anatolia, which has its mountainous northern border with the same mountain range Mount Ararat is presumed to be on.
Curious stuff. Now that mountain in Turkey might not be the Mount Ararat that Noah is said to have landed on, but if it were, the archaeological record seems to show the movement of people from the earliest times were traveling south from around that area.
During the Ubaid period, the first signs of civilization appear, architecture, pottery, both being distinctive. The Halaf people were absorbed and became one with the Ubaids. One of the biggest unifiers of people is shared language. Also ethnicity and religion.
I would put it forward that complete assimilation can only occur when the language, heritage, histories, and religion of the people in question are similar. Which is exactly what we see during the Ubaid period, which is quite a stark difference in what we see during the Uruk expansion. Well, to be fair, we see a lack of diversity. Granted, this could be because the alluvial plains of Sumer possibly covering up past civilizations and just lost in the alluvial flats. Consider that, with the next people movement coming out of Sumer, the Uruk expansion. So named because Uruk is a central city of the time period. Makes sense. Good old Gilgi.
So Mikey, what we had before is a bunch of people movements starting from Anatolia, leading eventually into Sumer, and then a huge, very, very large people movement coming out of Sumer and spreading out to nearby and far-off regions. This is at the end of the Ubaid period and is what we call the aforementioned Uruk expansion. In Sumer, because of their alluvial plains, which is a fun way of saying sediment-rich soil, that the highlands of the north fed with the two mighty rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, much like the Nile for Egypt.
This set up trading patterns with Anatolia, who was resource-rich. The southern Mesopotamians had food, a lot of it, the ancient grains, and in abundance, and they traded their wealth for the resources of the north.
Now, starting in the 3rd millennium BC, the people of Sumer started to spread out. The why? They don't know, but for some reason, they did it in large quantities. The people-laden region of Sumer left in droves. They took with them the knowledge of things they had specialized in, writing being just one thing. Isn't it interesting how the massive move of people spread out the ability to proto-write all over the region? Other cities started to pop up. It wasn't just writing that they exported, but religion and architecture, pottery, how to irrigate, how to organize. And this influence is felt throughout the Near East. Urbanization and command-style city-states became the norm until the Akkadians founded the first empire.
And that, Mikey, is how and where civilization began. Agriculture, irrigation, animal domestication, writing, the dang wheel, all innovations from Mesopotamia that sets the stage for the drama of history to unfold. Here is what you need to know. We talked about some theories on how people first got organized and why. We see an expansion south by some of the first known people groups, known as Ubaid, into Sumer, although it was probably in the spring. But then around the 4th century BC, or 4000 BC, 6,000 years ago anyway, give or take, a large and influential expansion happened north into Anatolia and the Iranian plains. And that's it, Mike. People moving in from Anatolia first, then moving back out en masse, so big it is called an expansion, the Uruk expansion. And that set up the backdrop for where our modern society comes from. Next time we're going to look at some of the myths and god pantheons that informed the Sumerian perspective and gave rise to many of the ancient pagan religions. And most importantly, how they differ from the biblical narrative. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Mesopotamia, 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 Mesopotamia. Mesopotamian, Passamaquoddy, Mesopotamia. I can't think. I keep on Mesopotamian it up. He said it.